Last time in the last episode, I explained the difference of what law is and what policy is. So policy is any decision or action or inaction taken by the government or its entities. So it can either be the government directly, be it its arms, the president himself, or the entities that carry out government services. That is maybe KPLC, that's a government entity. We have Kengen. We have, I'm trying to look for government entities. We have Kipra. Kipra is a policy making body. We have so many other government entities and boards and agencies that they function under the function of the government, and the work of policies is to direct them to solve issues in the society. It can be as broad as financial priorities or responsibilities that the government has for its people, but the main agenda of a policy is to meet an end goal, and the end goal is meeting a public problem. So a problem that is faced in a society. Whilst law...
Let me take my book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or law.
Yeah. Whilst law is the backbone of what builds policy. So law is what regulates what happens in the country, the constitution, and what they pass maybe in the courts or what. Now that is law. So you can liken policy and law to the chicken and egg. You can't really tarnish a law without talking about policy, and policy without talking law. So you can say law is the foundation, while policy is now the action of meeting a particular problem. Yeah. But now law is broader since it encompasses, it shows you the regulations of, okay, if you're going to meet a public problem, this is how you're going to do it. So it's what that bases the structure of what we need to do. So there are different models that direct what a policy is, and I'll get to what you're talking about. But when you're talking about, I could only think of two models. One of them is called the multiple stream framework. What does this mean? It is a theory by John Kingdon in 1984 that he drafted that says there are three streams that influence something to be that pushes a policy to be a main agenda for the government. Number one is a public problem. Number two, it is other policy options that are available. Number three, it is politics. Those three things determine if a policy is pushed forward or not. It's what sets forth, according to his theory, it's what sets forth what is the priority for meeting a particular policy. And then the other one I can think about is called the garbage can model. So this is basically, you see how a garbage can is, unaweza tupa all manner of things hapo ndani. So the garbage can model talks about problems ziko hapo ndani, solutions ziko hapo ndani. So it's the work of the bureaucrats and the people in positions of power to determine wacha nisokote hii, ni gani ndo itamatch na hii ndo itamatch from all that kind of me. So this type of models try to show what are the priorities that the government, remember we said policy is public policy. There is private policy and public. So private is for other institutions, but public policy is mainly about the government because the public is the citizens. So that's its aim, to address the problems that the citizens face. So when the government places something as a priority, as a public policy, for example, like CBC, for example, like SHA, the Kenya Environmental Policy, those are public policies because they are policies that meet a public problem, something that the public wants to be solved. So when you talk about, you meant so much into teaching modern because how, when you are talking about having the system flawed in regards to
In regards to
having
What exactly?
having the system flawed in regards to what the president decides. Okay, for example, let's use the example like she and Sha, right? So for a policy to be effective and to be termed as good, it has to be implementable. It has to be something that is applicable. It can be good on paper, but if it's not applicable, it is not a good policy. It needs to go back for reviewership.
A good policy needs to be implementable.
Implementable and can be able to be reviewed. Inaweza rudiwa kuangaliwa. Because you can't have a perfect policy.
What do you mean by implementable?
Implementable is, for example, something like CBC. CBC is good on paper. I have the document on my phone. It is great. It's a great idea. And it's something that most governments are doing, not only Kenya, but all over Africa and the world, especially in developing countries, to bridge the gap that our education system had. But they didn't sit down to think about how will it be able to be implemented. It wasn't well factored in the paper. For example, how will the people go about? So for example, kama una distinguish kuna particular school, for example, like Mamu, is it the prestigious schools you can think of Mangu, you can think of Alliance. Hizo zitakuwa tu za watu good in sciences. But when you're good in a humanity, like I am, I'm not good with my sciences, I'm very good with humanities. Mi napelekwa kwa extra county school, but napita. So the implementer, what's it called? The feasibility, the way it can be able to be applied, how feasible it is what determines whether a policy is good or bad. And I think that's one of the failures this government has, because they just roll out. I think they mainly depend, now when we look at Kindon's theory, they mainly depend on politics. They don't look at the work on the ground.
Because now for a policy to be rolled out, there are three things that need. So that's politics, public problem, and the last one you told you?
Other policy options. So even when you look in you look in a policy document, anyone that you can get, it's usually backed up with other sources that have influenced it to come. It can't, unless now it's the first one, a comprehensive policy ndio ya kwanza, but it usually has backs up kuonyesha this is what backs up the mind of where you're going towards with your paper or the document that you're bringing forth. So I think that's one of the biggest problems with the current government, where if they are making a decision, they make it in a rush. It can be good, but if they don't look at the foresight of how can this be actualized in the ground, it doesn't work. It is not good anymore. It is bad. Something like Shina Shah. All of a sudden they've just changed. We have been told, it has changed. You don't know where to go. You don't know where to start. I can remember last month we were burying my grandpa. He was sick for a while and we had lazima deni ingelipo hospitali. But now because with this new system, it's so much hard because you used to pay NHIF. Kuna hizi zenye zinaonyesha, but they are not applicable at this particular moment. So my mom and my aunts had to go to Meru, all the way to Meru, to make sure the relevant documents are signed so that the body can be released. You get? So when you talk about a policy like that, you have to have, lazima uangalie how you can't just put something and expect people to just embrace it. This is where now it means you're engaging the stakeholders. You're not only depending on your cabinet. And I think that's the most saddest thing. And I think we talked about it in the last episode, where nowadays the type of people that we elect who are going to represent for democracy is great. But for me personally, if I would be asked, I wouldn't support democracy if we don't have the right people in place.